Hi, today I'm going to go through recording a band in Pro Tools and the different things you'll need to set up to do a recording and how to go about routing and concerns to pay attention to. So let's start out. I'm going to be recording drums, bass and guitar today. In total the track is going to need about 21 audio tracks. So I'm going to set up some new tracks, which is Shift Command N, and our new tracks window opens. So we have 21 tracks, but to start with we have two kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, rack tom 1, rack tom 2. Then we have our overheads. Now I'm going to use a stereo mic for that. So what we can do is we can select obviously the amount of tracks. So I've got 6 tracks. I want them to be mono audio tracks. If I wanted to change them, I would press Command, and then with the cursors I can move sideways to change from mono to stereo, and I can move while pressing Command up and down with my cursors to select different types of tracks, whether it be instrument, MIDI track, etc. So I want 6 mono audio tracks. Now I'm going to press Shift Command and down with the cursor and I get a new selection. I'm going to select 1 stereo audio track. That brings us up to 8, and then I have 13 tracks or 13 mono tracks. So Shift Command down, 13, and they are going to be mono audio tracks. Now I also want to add a master fader to the session, so I'm going to press Shift Command and down, and on this I'm going to press Command and the cursor to the right, stereo, and then I'm going to, while pressing Command, press down on the cursor until I get to master fader. Now I can just click create, and there we have all our tracks. So we have overheads and we have all the rest of the tracks. Now just as a matter of habit, I usually add a phase meter to the master fader while I'm setting up for recording, and this just allows me to have a look at the phase between the microphones while I'm still setting them up and make sure that everything is okay. So plus is in phase, minus is out of phase. This will just give us our balance between left and right, and this is just giving us our sound field, showing us how wide the stereo image is. Now I'm going to go ahead and name all the tracks and select my inputs and outputs. Our inputs are selected here and our outputs are selected here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I've named all my tracks. I have assigned the correct inputs for them from the converter, and I'm just going to move my master fader down into the middle in between the drums and bass. And now we can have a listen to the instruments. So the drummer is out in the room playing live. We can just arm our tracks and have a listen to the microphones and see if anything needs adjusting. So here are my overheads. It sounds okay and the level is good. Let's have a look at the phase, and we can see that the phase is actually in the minus. So those two channels are out of phase with each other, and that'll need to be adjusted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a trim to all of the channels, and I'm going to select them all. So an easy way to select a large amount of channels is to select one channel and go to the end of the selection, press Shift, and then click on that channel, and it'll select everything in between. Other than that, you can just press Command and click select or deselect by clicking on the channels. So I'm going to just click on this guy, press Shift, click on this guy, and then press Command and deselect the master. The reason I'm doing that is I don't want to put a trim plugin onto the master channel, but I do want to put it onto every other channel. So if I go to select the plugin, trim, if I press Alt while doing that, it'll put it onto every single channel in the session. If I press Shift and Alt, it'll only do it to the selected channels. So I'm just going to press Shift, Alt, and then select my trim plugin. And you can see that it's added to every single channel except the master. Then trim is just a simple plugin that allows us to make adjustments to our level and of course to change our phase. So let's have a look. If I want to have two plugins open, once again, I just click on the red button and then I can open this as well. Now you might see a problem in that this plugin is a single channel, a signal plugin for a stereo channel. So we've got one phase switch, but because I selected a multi-mono plugin, not a multi-channel plugin, this is actually two mono plugins into one window. And they are linked together at the moment. So you can see master link button. If I deselect that, I can treat the two channels separately. So I'm going to just reverse the phase. Let's have a listen first. I'm going to select the right hand side of the plugin and I'm going to switch the phase switch in. And we can see here our phase go from negative to positive. Now you can see the phase switch is in. If I go back to the left hand side of the channel, you can see the phase switch is out. So now we can see that we've solved a phase issue with our overheads. Let's have a listen to some of the other microphones in the room. Got a kick in. So this microphone is inside the kick drum. And a lot of the time I'll check my microphones against the overheads. The overheads are the main sound of the drum kit, and I'm treating all the close mics as spot mics. So they're being added in to give more definition to the different elements of the drum kit. So we're treating the overheads as the main sound and adding the close mics in to add more definition, but they should always sound good in relation to the overheads. And because each mic on each instrument, like snare and kick drum, are all varying distances away from the overheads, it's important to check the phase between them. So let's just have a listen to the overheads and add the kick drum in and check the phase against them. We seem to be getting a little bit more punch out of the kick drum with the phase switch in. And now let's have a listen to the outside kick mic. Check its phase against the overheads. So that sounds good with the phase reversed, but let's check the two kick drum mics against each other. And it's much better with the phase out. I'm going to group the two kick mics together. So I'm going to press Command G and name that group kick. Now you'll see up here it says no group, and when I click OK, it says A kick. Now the kick group is A on the keyboard, so by just clicking A I can turn it off, turn it on. It's very handy. So we can move them together, just click A and readjust. Okay, now let's have a listen to the snare. So our level is good. And once again, we want to check it against the overheads. Check the phase. Seems to sound better reversed. So this has to do with the varying distances of the mics, the snare drum's sound entering the snare drum mic and then continuing on to the overheads. And we're getting a fuller sound with the snare drum's mic, top mic, reversed. Now we'll have a listen to the bottom snare drum mic and compare it to the top. So let's blend that in. And I'm going to just check the phase against the two of these. And to my ears, it sounds better with the phase reversed. That might be kind of strange because usually we reverse the phase of the bottom snare mic against the top. So if the top mic's phase has been reversed, it would suggest that we would leave the bottom mic with the phase switch out. The reason we generally reverse phase is because both microphones are looking at either side of the drum. When we hit the snare drum, the skin is depressed downwards and basically the sound is emanating down into the bottom mic. So that's receiving a peak at the start of its sound wave, whereas the microphone looking down on the snare drum is receiving a trough. So both microphones are taking in a signal that's opposite. So generally by reversing phase on the bottom snare mic, they will both receive a similar signal and we won't get phasing issues. So in this case, I'm going to just check with using a handy little trick, which is basically using my phase meter. So I'm going to pan them hard left and hard right. And we want to kind of see the initial hit hitting dead center. Okay. And now I'm going to check my phase between the two of them because they're both, one is on the left, one is on the right, so we can see is it actually in phase or not. It seems to be poking upwards. I'll just change the phase to the bottom snare mic. So currently the top snare mic's phase button is in, the bottom's is out. And we can see when the snare drum hits, it actually dips into minus. So I'm going to flick it back. And now we can see on the initial hit, it's moving towards positive. So the snare is actually in phase with both microphones with their phase switch in. And we know that the top mic, which is going to be our main snare drum sound, sounds better with its phase switch in. So let's blend them with the overheads. Add the kick. I'm going to group the snare. So Command G, SN OR. Now we have toms, which I'm not going to spend too much time on, just in this. And we have some room mics as well, so let's bring those guys in. So this is a microphone about 4 foot in front of the drum kit. We have a far room mic at the back of the room. We have a hall, which is actually outside the main live room. And I'm going to just balance everything together. Okay, so now I have a drum sound that sounds reasonable. I've checked my phase against my overheads, and I can make an assessment on the sound. Do I want to change the mic positions? Do I not? And it's important to get a rough balance going and have a proper listen to the drums before you actually press record, because when you haven't recorded it yet, it's very easy to solve problems by just going out and moving microphones or changing them for different microphones, and solving the problems before you actually start recording. And it takes more time later in the mix to solve issues than it does to just move a microphone. Okay, so the drummer is ready to go. We've set all our levels on the preamps. We can see the levels coming in. They're all reasonably good. Nothing's too loud. Nothing's ridiculously quiet. We really don't need things to be up really loud in a digital system. It's 24 bits, so we've got a massive dynamic range. Our noise floor is very, very low, so we really don't need to cane it. When you were recording onto tape, you had quite a high noise floor, so it made sense to try and get a high level into the machine. But with digital, there's no need. Okay, so there's our drums. I'm going to just group the drum kit. So I'm going to press G, Command G, and we'll call it kit. And we can see now C has come up for the kit. So if I press C on the keypad, I can turn on and off that drum group. And I'm going to just deactivate all of these channels. And so we can move on to the bass. So with the bass, we've recorded a safety of a clean DI. We are recording, so let's have a listen to that. And then we actually have the amplifier. The bass sound is quite a distorted one, so we'll just have a listen. And even though that's our bass sound, we can also blend the DI in with it to get more clarity. So let's do that. And once again, it's worth checking the phase. Just the time relationship from the sound traveling out of the speaker in the bass amp and into the microphone, as opposed to the sound traveling through the DI, which has basically no time delay. So we'll just check the phase between the two of these and see if the sound improves or degrades. And it seems to be fuller with the phase switches out. Okay, I'm going to group the two of these guys. Command G, bass. So we can treat them as one. And we also have guitars. Now the guitar is recorded in stereo with two microphones on the amplifier and some stereo effects, giving it a wide image. Let's have a listen. And I'm going to just set the two of those to 0 by pressing Alt and clicking on the fader. Once again, if I press Alt, click on the fader, it goes straight to 0. And I will set up a group. GTR. And we can check the phase. And it's in the plus, so they're panned hard left and hard right, so we're not getting any weird issues. So now we have all our levels in, we're happy with the sound, we've assessed all our mic positions and we're ready to record. But the musicians can't hear themselves, so we need to set up some headphone sends for the musicians. So I'm going to select all the channels that we want to send out. Deselect these, which are the overdub tracks, which we aren't using at the moment. And I'm going to use an auxiliary send, which is one of these guys here. And we're going to use that to send a signal out to the musicians. Now, you could use the aux send on your console if you're using an analog console, and sometimes it's a lot handier. The signal's coming in from the microphone straight into the console, and it'll go out the aux send before it ever gets digitized and sent into the computer. Computers tend to always add some sort of latency, which is a time delay, to the sound, and which is something that some musicians will be very sensitive to, others won't mind so much. Generally, we set the hardware buffer size when recording to the lowest that we can. The system will work really quickly, but it'll also have a lot less power. So you basically will work with a really powerful computer. You could get to 32 samples, 64 samples. A computer that's not so powerful could be 128. When you get to 128 to 256 samples, musicians will probably start noticing a mild delay in what they're hearing back in their headphones, and that can be very problematic for some musicians. So it's generally a good idea to, if you're using an analog console, use the auxiliary sends on the console. But in this situation, we may not have a console, we might just be using a sound card, or any other number of reasons. Maybe we're using loads of previously recorded material and we want to just do a couple of overdubs, so we have to send out the things from Pro Tools anyway. So we're going to set up a headphone send for our musicians. So we've got 3 musicians, drummer, bass player, guitarist, and we are going to set up 3 headphone sends. Now I selected a few tracks. I don't want the master in that selection, but all my drums, my bass and my guitar. And now I'm going to set up a send on all of those channels. So I'm going to press Alt and Shift. If I just pressed Alt, it would do it to every channel. Alt and Shift, it'll do it to the selected channels. So let's set up a bus. So I go out to my buses and I'm going to just pick bus 18. And you can see it appears on all the selected channels. Bus 19. Bus 20. And I'm going to name these. So this is going to be going to the drummer, so I'm going to just rename it drummer headphones. Out of laziness, I'll just copy headphones. And on the next one, I'm going to rename it and we'll call it bass headphones. And on the last one, I'll rename it GTR headphones. Okay, now if we just press Command and click on the little diamond shape here on these auxes, we can actually view all the faders. So these are the faders and they're being sent out a bus, but where does that bus go? We could have sent it to a direct output, but it doesn't give us as much control as if we send these to an auxiliary channel. So I'm going to set up a few new channels. So Shift, Command, N. I'm going to set up 3 and I'm going to press Command and down until I get to auxiliary input and create. So these 3 channels are different to the audio channels in that they're just auxiliary inputs. They allow sound to travel through them, but you cannot record onto them. So we've got no record arm. I'm going to send these guys to here. So this guy is going to take in drummer headphones. This is going to take in bass headphones. This is going to take in guitar headphones. And I'm going to set all these to pre-fader. Now I'm just going to click Alt and click on the P button. And this means that all of these little mini faders are before these faders, which means me in the control room, I can change my levels and the musicians won't be affected. If the pre button is out, then any fader movement I make will affect the volume. The sound is actually traveling through the channel, through my fader, and then out to the mini fader. With the pre button in, these faders are unaffected by my faders. So I can make adjustments to the listening level in the control room and the musicians will be unaware. So drummer headphones is traveling out this bus. If I turn something up, it'll be sent out to this bus. This bus is appearing here. And where does this go? We're going to send this to a hardware output. So I'm going to go down to my headphones 1, which is basically going straight out of the computer to a headphone amp, which is going straight to the set of headphones that's on the drummer's head. And the bass is going to go to headphones 2. And the guitarist is going to get headphones 3. Now, I'm going to press safety solo. You might notice if I solo, all of the mute buttons on every other channel kind of go red to signify that we are using solo in place, which is destructive soloing. So when I press a solo, it basically mutes every other channel in the session. Now, if I was to solo something while the band were recording, it would mute the headphone sends. They would stop hearing each other and they would stop playing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command and click on the solo button. And it's basically a safety solo. So it means when I solo these channels will also solo. because they're getting their signal from these mini faders, which are pre-fader, so they don't care whether the solos are on or off. The sound will continue traveling to them, and they will continue sending out signal because they are also soloed. So you can see every other channel. The mute buttons go red. On these ones, they're unaffected. Let's just name them. So I'll call it Dior HD, Bass HD, Guitar HD. So these are our master auxiliaries, basically. So all of these faders are going to this fader here. So it also gives me an idea of the level that's going to the output. I can also do things like if one of the musicians is saying my headphone mix is really muddy, I can actually, kind of cheat and just stick an EQ onto this and maybe dial out a bit of the low end or brighten it up, give a bit more mid-range clarity. Sometimes you'll have a musician that needs more level and you can put a limiter onto the master just to get them as much signal as they want. And anyway, let's let the band play and arm our tracks and send out music to the musicians. So I'll just turn it down in here. So let's send some kick drum to the drummer. I'll turn off my drum group. So I'll press C on the keypad, or on the keyboard. And we can see kick drum appearing on his headphone send. Bit of snare, some overheads, some bass, and some guitar. Same with the bass player is going to want to hear a lot of the drums and a fair amount of bass and a bit of guitar. And the guitarist is also going to want to hear some drums and a bit of bass and plenty of guitar. Now, what we can do is we can actually have a listen to what they're hearing. It's not ideal. If we were using an analog console, we would be able to just click the AFL, which is after fader listen, as opposed to pre-fade listen, which is generally what you have on a master output. But we could go to auxiliary 1 in the master section and press AFL, and we'd be able to hear what's being sent out on auxiliary 1, which would allow us to hear what's being sent out to whatever set of headphones. We could do it with aux 2, 3, 4, 5. So we could just have a quick check of what we're sending out. The way I'm going to do it here is I'm actually going to mute all of these channels. And we are going to just have a listen to these guys. So currently all these channels are routed to analog outputs 1 and 2, which is my set of speakers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up so that our headphone sends, instead of going out to the headphones, they will go to my speakers. So let's just have a listen to headphone output 1. We'll just send it to my speakers. So this is the drummer's mix. I can turn up the kick. And that's actually the mix. Let's send it back out to them. That's the mix that's going to the drummer's headphones. The bass player's headphones, let's send it to ourselves. Loads of bass. Maybe give them a bit more snare. Now, the guitarist's headphones, we can have a listen. I might give them a bit more drums. So it's beneficial to be able to hear what the musicians are hearing in their headphones, because sometimes the musician won't be used to working in a studio and they'll struggle to tell you what they actually want. They may be telling you to turn up different things and you're setting their headphones. But until you actually hear the mix that they have in their headphones, it's very hard for you to judge. So it can be quite a lot easier to get a good mix in their headphones if you can hear what they're actually hearing. So we've got our headphones set up and we've got the musicians in the room playing and they're ready to record and we're ready to record them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just arm all the tracks. So let's first of all have a little look. I'm going to arm all of my tracks. I don't want to record onto these tracks because they are microphones set up for overdubs. And we can just have a listen. So now, one final thing is click track. The band want to play to a click. And we've set up the tempo of the session. It is 92 BPM. So this is where we would set it up. Make sure it's at the 0 location. Beat 1, 92 BPM, and click OK. So we have a BPM for the song. I'm going to add in a click track. We could obviously add a track. We could just add an auxiliary input and put a click on it. But we can actually create an actual click track. So I'm just going to select that. It appears with a click plugin on it. And currently this is going to go straight to my headphones. So let's have a listen. Or to my speakers. I'm going to change it to a more pleasant sound. So you can see we're hearing it, but the musicians aren't. So I need to send it to them. So I'm going to set up, I'm actually going to be lazy and I'm going to click Alt and just drag this across. And the same here, and the same here. And we can check our levels and make sure the musicians are happy enough with them. The drummer will probably want quite a lot of click. Bass player, similar. The guitarist will probably want to get their timing from the drums. So I'll leave a little bit in and they can ask for it to be turned up or turned down. Let's select all the tracks we want to record onto. And we are ready to do a take. So to record, we can press F12 in the function keys. We can press number 3 in the number pad, and we can press Command Spacebar. So let's do one of those and get recording. Cool. So we have recorded the song, and now we're ready to do any overdubs if the band are happy with their performance.